Hey guys, it's VaulSC here. I hope that you're having a great week. Welcome back to another episode of Let's Build Some Lists, and this is the video series where I share my screen on infinityuniverse.com/army/infinity, and I build some army lists from scratch so that I can take you guys through my thought process, and you can come with me as I let you know which unit profiles I like and which ones go well together, and how you actually formulate an army list which can accomplish missions and really have units that work well together. We're going to cover off three different factions as usual, one after the other, and that'll be it. So stick with me as we have a bit of a good time. Some of the lists will be very competitive, some of them won't be. It's more about showing you guys the process, the thoughts behind assembling army lists, because as we know, coming up with army lists for Infinity is just as much fun, if not more fun, than actually playing the game, as I'm sure many of you guys can appreciate. So, the first list we're going to be looking at today will be one of the PanOceania sectorials, and I have chosen to cover Svalharaima's Winter Force. So we're going to click on this and load everything up. Make sure that the screen webcam is in a comfortable position down here. In fact, let's just say a few things about this faction. So, if you are a very new player to Infinity and you're sort of wondering what it's all about, and you're looking at some miniatures, and maybe you've just checked out Operation Kaldstrom or something like that, and you've seen these wonderful looking winter-themed PanOceania troops, you might be wondering what really characterizes this faction, and you could be forgiven for assuming that it's sort of about, you know, snow terrain and being on an ice planet, and maybe the stealth of, you know, going through blizzards and stuff like that, and withstanding the cold. That's, of course, not what this faction's actually like in game terms, but, you know, when you're new to Infinity and you're trying to make guesses based on what the miniatures look like, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody thought that. Once you graduate to being an intermediate player, or like a player with a little bit of experience, you might be of the opinion that the thing this faction's really about is the specific units that seem to be, you know, Winter Force themed. So when you look through vanilla PanOceania, at all of the PanOceania lists, you might come across one or two units that seem to be Svalharayma like a theme. For example, this Jotun is called a Svalharayma Armored Cuirassier, so however you pronounce that. So he's like a Svalharayma themed unit. So you might again, we could probably forgive you for thinking that playing the sectorial is about a link team of Nis troopers or a Jotun tag, but in actual fact, the faction has nothing to do with that, really. As you guys know, this faction is really just about this one profile here, the Kahu with the Feuerback +1 burst. I'm sorry to say it, guys, but once you get into Infinity and you understand what things are really all about, it's just really that simple. You take this particular guy, this is the only sectorial that can build a link team around him. Corvus Belli have either deliberately or inadvertently or accidentally made this one specific profile a little bit too powerful. And when I say a little bit, I mean like way too powerful. So we are going to be building a list around it today, and we can sort of have a look into, you know, why I've said everything I've just said there. I think if you come to Svalharayma and you build a list with 0 of this profile, you're doing yourself a disservice. You're not giving yourself a decent chance to win. If you take all 5, the availability there, it's overkill. Really, you need other stuff supporting them. My list today is going to feature 2 of them. You can definitely build a good Svalharayma list with just 1. You can definitely build a reasonable list with 3 or even 4, although I think that's just still a bit too heavy-handed. 2 is a good number, and I'm going to be doing that so that I can make a Fireteam Core around the first guy and a Fireteam Harris around the second guy. So you'll note that they are wildcards for some stupid reason. They can just join any fire team, which means that you only need sort of 1 and have them all propped up by Fusiliers, for example. I would prefer that Corvus Belli fixed this by basically saying you have a fire team core of Kahus, up to 3 Fusiliers can join them, for example, and that way you have to actually include a couple of them and have that cost in there. Anyway, we're going to grab a Fusilier Lieutenant because there aren't any really awesome Lieutenant options in this sectorial. I mean, you look at Uma Sorensen, she's a meme, very overcosted. having just a couple of Fusiliers there are troops you're going to be taking anyway. There's not really a lot of stuff like Lieutenant level 2 as far as I can see. And the main idea here is that your Kahu actually comes with NCO and is going to be able to use that Fusilier's order anyway, and that you'll never spend the Lieutenant order on that Fusilier pretty much. So there is that. Jotun Lieutenant, again, I mean, you don't really want the Lieutenant option on the Jotun, otherwise you have to start throwing a chain of command in there, which we don't really want because there's no unit here that is really, really good with chain of command, although I think I said that in my last video, and then halfway into the video I realized there actually was a good option, so maybe I should do a bit of study beforehand. Anyway, we'll get to that. So our core team here has Kahu number 1, it has, let me make the screen a little bit bigger, let me just zoom in a little bit here, oh, too big. Let's come back to about 110. I'm pretty sure you guys can see it. Okay, so we've got our 2 Fusiliers there. Let's throw in a paramedic as well, just so that if that Kahu does go unconscious and isn't removed by shock, we could have a Fusilier nearby with paramedic ability if we happen to have moved out. We're still going to be including a trauma doc in this list, though. Possibly even the Infirmaras, just because it can join that core, that Harris of Hospitaliers. We'll come back to that. Anyway, I'm going to include a trauma doc for now. We may cut him later. So Kahu, 3 Fusiliers. I'll throw in 1 more Fusilier, and if we find ourselves some more really good options that can join our main link team, we'll prop them in there and swap the Fusilier out. So the list is still looking pretty cheap. We've got that main Kahu there. The thing about this guy is that he's going to absolutely crush in the active turn. You've got that whopping ballistic skill of 13, which goes right up to 16. We're talking like heavy infantry level of ballistic skill ability. And he's got that brilliant combination of MSV1 and mimetism. So he's basically getting around the enemy negative mods, and he's applying a negative mod on them, and that additional +1 burst on the Feuerbach gives him that 4 burst shot in the active turn, which is so important. The other really crucial thing about him is that he's got the gun that has armor piercing and double action on it. So you're just pumping out a crazy amount of damage, and there are very few enemy ARO pieces in the game that can withstand that, which is, again, why if you're going to bother playing the sectorial, you do need to base it around the Kahu, because you need a crutch on something that's really, really strong. What this sectorial doesn't have is some of the really busted, undercosted stuff that Nomads and Combined Army have. They don't have a lot of stuff with these awesome peripherals. The order pool of your army can be gutted quite easily. You don't have a lot of stuff in the midfield to just tank hits and stall the opponent. And we'll learn a bit more about how that goes later. Now, we are forgetting another really important piece that I really love including in Svelorema, and that is the Rock. The big road bump, speed bump, and that is the Knight of Justice with Missile Launcher, because he can also join any fire team. So what we do is we're going to drop 1 Fusilier out, and then prop that Knight of Justice into the main link team. And the thinking here is that the Knight acts as the ARO piece. So the Kahu's staying in total cover when it's not our turn, and the Knight of Justice is just standing there in partial cover when it's not our turn. So your opponent has to deal with that Knight initially. Armor 5, +3 for cover, armor 8. It can sustain 2 wounds before going unconscious, and then you revive it with your paramedic or your trauma doc. And if your opponent doesn't have any negative mods, it's just shooting from long range, you're at ballistic skill 17 with 2 dice, and of course that template. So that's a really, really, really big deal. You also give your link team a little bit of close combat ability. If you happen to uproot the team and move out later in the game, you've got at least somebody in there who might be able to smash face close combat with that double action close combat weapon. It won't come up very much, but the point of this guy is to basically have this obnoxious trooper watching the table. Your opponent has to spend a few orders shooting first. You go unconscious and you revive him later. And the idea is that you don't want your opponent just charging across the table with something which can trade with your rather fragile pieces elsewhere in the army. Because then when it comes to your turn, you're going to have fewer orders to fuel your Kahus, and we don't want that. So my recommendation is to run the Knight of Justice in the same way you'd run him in the military orders list. Big old missile launcher in the core link team. So we've got a pretty good core here. The Kahu needs some support though, so we're going to talk about who will be going along with the Kahu? So we're going to look around now for Harris options. Indigo Richard Quinn is a contender. He's I feel like he also has MSV1, so although it's a different range band, usually you're going to be firing with a Kahu anyway, because the Feuerbark just pumps out so much more damage, and you've got Mimetism in there as well with it, so he's not my first choice. Coming down to here, Agnes Ferreira is a wild card. She's a bit of a meme, but I do want to point out that she is a specialist, so she can come along and press buttons while she's being carried by your Kahu. And at only 14 points, she keeps that overall cost of the Link team in check. So, believe it or not, I might actually think about including her there, and we'll drop her later if I can't think of a better option to throw in. Now, the other idea I like here is Shona, a Karano, because she's not too expensive, and she covers some short-range stuff very, very well. She's amazing at dodging. So if you have your Kahu Harris as the sort of strike force, moving out in the middle of the table, getting some angular shots at the enemy, devastating them with the Feuerbark, and then you're kind of cut off and stranded, Shona is really good at dodging out of cover and engaging things and hitting them with their nanopulsar, and that can kind of allow you to trade a bit more effectively if they come after your Harris in the midfield, which is why I quite like her in that Link team. So we can consider that. If we come down here to Gunnar Landemark, he's the other choice there. Gunnar, I don't love him just because you pay a lot of points for that one wound there. Let's see, he's got Dogged, which is, obviously not as great as NWI, and am I seeing any shock immunity in there? I don't know, maybe I'm just blind. I can't see any shock immunity. So, he fails to dodge a mine, or somebody hits him with a random multi-rifle HMG, that kind of thing with shock, then he's going to be feeling pretty sad, and that 34-point investment's a lot. So, yeah, I kind of like Shona a little bit more. I mean, he's good at trading with NBW and Berserk, but still, my preference is for Shona. So yeah, we might come back to that. If we've got a whole bunch of spare points, maybe we can upgrade Shona to Gunnar, but Shona's my preference. And again, I would have liked to have included Richard Quinn in. I think Richard Quinn is more of an NCA option, or Varuna possibly. Because Yakahu sort of overshadows him so much, he might not be appropriate. Looking here, Vargas, they have Harris as well. What we could do is have the Kahu join them, and Shona, of course, can join them, and Agnes can join them as well. Would we want a Vargar in there? Again, they do feel a bit pricey, and they do feel a bit fragile, and really you're only getting albedo out of that. Have they got any particularly good guns here that really you'd be wanting to rely on over that Feuerbark? And the answer is definitely no, so... Sorry, Vargas. Nokins are not Fireteam linkable, so I think we'll move on with our list here. It's looking pretty good. One other thing that I kind of lament here is that the Hospitalia Knight would be really cool in this Link team with an HMG, because you got up to 5 dice, BS14, and he's got plenty of armor, 2 wounds, so I really love him being in there. But the sad reality, and the unfortunate thing about Infinity Game Design, is that he just is not better than that Kahu. That Kahu, it just really blows him out of the water by having a more appropriate gun and having better abilities, given that he's got MSV1 and Mimetism, which are just so important. Similar story with Orc Troopers, to be honest. It's sad. I mean, they've even got this whole category of winter version of Orc Troopers, and the Kahu just outshines everybody, which is just silly. So, I'm still going to include my Trauma Doc in there, and in fact, I'm even going to give her a Palbot, because I want her to be able to cover both the Knight of Justice and the Kahu and the other Kahu and the other team, and you want to spread them out a bit. So, we're well and truly prepared to do some healing here with our Paramedic plus Trauma and Palbot. The list is cracked 200 points now. I'm just going to throw in a few Fugazis here, at least a couple. We could even have 3 of them, just sort of round out the list a bit more. Now we need something a little bit more midfieldy and button pressy if we can. Probably pop in the Warcore. We're going to need him at some stage. I quite like the Noken. One reason I like the Noken is that, and again I don't know how to pronounce this guy's name, I kind of like him because if we are in a mission or have a matchup where we really just want to go first so that we don't die to specular killers and fides and stuff or that kind of thing, having something that can attack immediately and doesn't require a lot of orders to shunt across the battlefield can be good. And we do have a lot of SWCs left, so I'm just going to go ahead and whack that Noken Spitfire into the list. And the idea is that this guy's going to be our reserve trooper, especially if we're taking first turn. So we deploy everything, we can see where our opponent's stuff is, you deploy him on a building in the middle of the table or on a flank, and you try and just move him in and pick off a few things. You might end your turn on suppression fire if there's a really good opportunity, or you might run away, but the idea is just really to trade him. He's not super costly. I mean, at 29 points, if you manage to kill 3 enemy regular order troopers and, you know, 20-30 points worth of stuff, and you've traded them in that manner, you've started to build yourself a bit of momentum, you've softened them up, and there's a better chance of moving the Kahu's over and finishing the job later. Looking at the Locust, Locust could do a similar thing, but I prefer the Noken just because the Spitfire is a better gun for the job there. And yeah, let's have a look. There's a few little differences here as well. I kind of like the total terrain there on the Noken. That's pretty nice. Oh, Locust has it as well. Yeah, again, it's if you like the shock marksman rifle for the shock value, maybe you should be going for the Locust, to be honest. I just prefer the Kahu. He's got ballistical 13, which is nice. Oh, sorry, the Noken is what I'm talking about. Sorry, I'm comparing the Noken and the Locust is actually a fairly even comparison. Noken's got slightly better armor. What else can we see here? This has only got 4 deployment 8 rather than infiltration. See, my preference is still just for that juicy Spitfire. You don't really want to be packing your hitman with just a 3-burst gun if you can have a 4-burst gun. That really is just the deciding factor for me. Coming back to this Infirmera, is it better to have the Infirmera in the teams or to stick with the Trauma Doc? No. I mean, saving the 9 points there is gold. The Infirmera is more of a choice that you take in military orders along with your Teuton Knights, who sort of cost around that amount anyway. So by having the Infirmera in there, you're not really sort of having to blow out the cost of that link team, and you can save yourself taking a Trauma Doc in addition to that, and you could take a lot of cheap robots and junk like that. Alrighty. Moving on. So we've got 48 points left, and we still need a couple more options in Group 2. I kind of want to go back to the Nokens here because they seem to be a very thematic Sphelerama sort of thing. And I note that there is a Forward Observer option where you can take a boarding shotgun Panzerfaust. Again, that seems like a pretty good little choice there, because if you are defending your back line, that Mimetism -6 and Panzerfaust and Flash Pulse makes him a very good ARO piece. But he still has that forward deployment option to go and press buttons with at Willpower 13, which is actually a little bit higher than what you normally get for PanOceania. So that does make a good little addition there, and it fills out our we've already filled out the SWCs. Just 23 more points left. I think Liang Kai was our little option buddy here. So Liang Kai means that we've got something in the list that has that midfield controlling sort of presence and really helps to defend by dodging into close combat. Having the light shotgun is really important. Liang Kai is really just a great piece to spend the Group 2 orders with to make sure you're always getting something up in the midfield and harassing. So that gives us 2 more points. Do we go here and turn this Fusilier into a Forward Observer? I think you might do that on specialist heavy missions. We could cut Agnes out and make something else there. I don't know if we need to do that. Fugazi could become a 9-point thing. I don't think that's needed. The Warcore could become a Tech B if you're allowed to take a Tech B. Let me just quickly see if that's legal in this sectorial. I'm not seeing it. I'm probably just blind. I'm sure that we can figure out other things to do with that 2 points. We could upgrade our Noken to a different version, or if we wanted to, maybe we could put that Locust in there. I still kind of like that guy though. So if you put this guy in, it's still 25 point model. I don't think it's worth it. We might just sort of stick here with that under-optimized 2-point gap until I can figure something out. I mean, there's 23 points. Richard Quinn, I think, is 23. So if you really wanted, you could take out Liang Kai, put Richard Quinn in there, and he could basically be in the first group, joining the Kahu. I just don't really see it. You've already got things which do the thing that Richard does, and Liang Kai helps to even this list out, and I feel make it a bit more competitive. What else have we got? Peacemaker, maybe. If we took the Peacemaker, we'd have 4 points free. So, yeah, there might be a possibility. I don't know, guys. I don't know. Peacemaker is very, very good. And Pathfinder could replace Agnes. I'm not really sure. I'm going to leave the list as is. If you guys are interested in this army list, maybe you could recreate it on your own and figure out how to get to 300 points with a similar sort of goal in mind for what we're doing with these guys here. But for now, that's been my look at Sphelorama. Okay. Let's move on. So list number 2, I believe, is going to be one of the Ariadna sectorials, and I would like to have a look into Caledonia Highlander Army. The thing that really got me interested in this sectorial was our first TTS League Grand Finals in N4 after the new rules came out, where we did have a guy go right through to the N Finals with Caledonia. And the really interesting thing that he came up with there is he was running 3 Cameronians. And because I had my N3 blinkers on, so to speak, I, questioned why, he didn't use McMurray instead. And it only takes a little bit of study before you can understand why that's the case. McMurray is a full 7 points more than the Cameronian, which is considerable. Like, that's a really big deal. And when you compare them, the Cameronians also have Phys 16 for dodging and throwing smoke grenades, and they also have the chain rifle +1 burst, just like McMurray does. So you've got some of the important stuff in there. For close combat, you've got the MA3 here, and these guys don't have MA3, but these guys got Natural Born Warrior, and he doesn't. So it's still kind of comparable. He's got Berserk, they don't. So that's what you're paying a full 7 points for. Is that worth 7 points? And in my view, not really. Like, if you're moving your Cameronian to something that's fairly weak in close combat, you'll typically beat it anyway. And although Berserk is very good at, like, stomping somebody else that actually has really good close combat ability, most of your targets, you will just be using the martial arts level 3 anyway, so as Berserk becomes a little bit redundant in a lot of cases. Whereas the Cameronian, if you go up against something like, Norkius or Miyamoto Musashi, your Natural Born Warrior really hurts them and gives you a chance to beat them up with a 20-point model. Or you can just go into close combat, they have a swing at you, and you hit them with 2 chain rifles. So the advantages that McMurray is picking up over the Cameronians just really isn't significant in my view. Armor 4 versus Armor 4, BTS 3 versus BTS 0, that does make a difference. They've both got total immunity. See, I think that 7 points could be spent on something else elsewhere in the army, and we'll have a look as we design this list whether there's really any opportunity to actually shave 7 points off, and I just don't think there will be. So with that in mind, let's start constructing this army list. So the very first thing you do in 100% of your CHA lists is you'll go down and find William Wallace, and you'll put the lieutenant version in here. There is absolutely no way to play the sectorial without including this guy, because he makes all of your irregular models, and you're going to have many of them. He's going to make them all regular, and he's got good stats around the board anyway. So yeah, William Wallace is going to be your main man. Now, you can form a fire team with Scots Guards or these the Berserker guys, the Galwegians. So you have options, but hardly anybody ever does that, because if you take volunteers, the Grey Rifle can join them, and the Grey Rifle can't really join the other 2 fire team core options, and you don't really, I mean, yes, you can put them with more mayors, but we'll talk about that later. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the absolutely mandatory heavy machine gun grey rifle, because otherwise there's nothing else in your list with a decent HMG, unless, again, you go Mormaz, and we'll talk about that later. In fact, we probably won't even talk about it. I just am not a fan of the Mormaz. So Caledonian Volunteers. The cheap guys with chain rifles are only 6 points. That does save us a lot of cost. So already we've got our 4-man team of Wallace, Gray, 2 volunteers, and I think we'll just pop in a paramedic here. I like the paramedic because obviously having something to heal troopers with is decent. Like if you're walking past the corpse of a Cameronian and you suddenly like fire a medikit into him and he's saving with his physical 16, you get your Cameronian back up again, that's a really big deal. So the paramedics are a really good choice here, and it's a specialist, so you're moving up with William Wallace and your Highlander Grey, and you're actually punching buttons later in the game. I think it's a big deal. Okay, so Caledonia has a tough time spending SWCs, which is why I'm just going to go and snap up 2 Catarans immediately. You're not going to have a big ARO game with this list, so the Catarans there are a great choice. You can keep them until you need to use them. They're actually quite powerful in the active turn, and they can be quite punishing when they get a hit, because that T2 sniper rifle will do 2 wounds rather than 1. So for just the 23 points, I think they're a really good choice. More stuff that I like here in this sectorial includes Uxia McNeil. I think the assault pistol one is the optimal one. We've seen a lot of people go on about how it's very cheesy to throw your smoke grenade down and then force them to dodge and then shoot at them through the smoke with MSV1, but bear in mind you're going to be at a penalty of -6 yourself, so it's not wonderful. And what you're generally going to be wanting to do is just kill the cheap and easy stuff with your assault pistol, and then trade into the more beefy stuff with your boarding shotgun, or even get into close combat with them inside of the smoke grenades. And she's a specialist operative, which can sometimes matter in some missions. So I am going to include the Uxia McNeil Specialist Assault Pistol version, as do a lot of Ariadna players. It's not unheard of to see this other profile on the field, though. Note that she does come with grenades when she takes the MSV1, which means she can lob them spec fire. My argument is that you're going to be mostly doing that with your Cameronians anyway, so if your plan is to do that, then just send one of the dog boys up the field. Yeah, Uxia McNeil, assault pistol. I think that's where we're at. Another profile that I'm a big fan of in CHA is the, we'll come to the Scots Guard in a minute. I'm thinking of the SAS Trooper. I just can't seem to find his profile on the list because I'm not looking carefully enough. Here he is, right at the top. Okay, so my favorite one is actually this Fort Observer, because he's a steal at 21 points. Anytime you can get that holy trinity of being a camo marker and having infiltration to be in the midfield and being a specialist, that is your specialist button pressing game. Any missions like supplies or acquisition or mind wipe or whatever it might be, these troopers are just a real godsend. So you'd be wanting to take at least one. I'm going to put 2 of them into my list, and we'll look at removing one of them later, perhaps, if I can't afford them. So there they are. All right. Are we going to take an actual doctor, a 112, or anything like that? Maybe. We'll come back to that. There is one choice that I'm interested in here, and I think this will be the one choice in the list which is going to come across as a little bit of an eyebrow raiser. And that is the Scots Guard with AP Spitfire. And the interesting thing about this guy is that he takes our SWC points right up to nearly 6, so we're actually spending them. And it allows us to have some sort of long-ranged armor-piercing game, whereas otherwise you're sort of relying on the Highlander Grey, and if he's trying to crack like a Marut or an Avatar or whatever, just not going to work, whereas the Scot maybe gives you a better chance of doing that. So having the Scot in there is my preference. That leaves us with, let's just count up. So the link team is there, it's 5 guys. Uxia, 3 Cameronians and a Scot, that's 10 in the first group. double SAS, double Cataran, and we've got 5 points left over, and this is where we come up to that Highlander rifle and just pop this guy in. He's effectively a 5-point model that provides a regular order because of Wallace, and he's, if you want him to be, he's a free smoke grenade with his impetuous order. So in Group 2, you've got your Highlander, who impetuous is up a little bit, throws a grenade. That buys the Cameronian some time to sort of run into the smoke and then just charge across the battlefield. And this list is actually quite competitive in my personal opinion. You're always going to be infiltrating with Uxia with superior infiltration. That's normally a risk with that ability, but you've got so many other things that you can attack with that if she fails her roll, you are fine. So she becomes that much more dangerous. This is indeed an army list that you want to go first with a lot of the time, unless your opponent you know is going to be playing a super defensive list, maybe Tohar or Nomads or something with a lot of peripherals and bits and pieces that can just get you as you close in on them. So yeah, very strong list. I actually kind of want to collect Caledonian just so I can play it, just because I sort of wrote them off when N4 first came out, but looking at the theory behind everything here, it's actually a very solid list which can contend with a lot of different options and surprises some of the top dogs. I mean, Nomads and Combined Army have a lot of things that are very vulnerable to what you're throwing down on the table here, which is pretty cool. Just one last thought about Mormaers. They are very expensive and they can't be buffed up by a fireteam core. They've really got to be in a very expensive Harris, and I'm just not seeing it. I think you need to be attacking and doing the damage with your Cameronians and Uxia, and their long-range stuff is going to be Catarans and the Highlander Grey. That's how I see it personally. As soon as you go with a Harris of like Mormaer Grey, you're having to sort of cut a lot of costs elsewhere. Yeah, arguably you could be doing that instead of the Scott AP Spitfire. I just like the Scott Spitfire. I think that he provides you the AP. Even when you're playing the Mormaer, they don't have... Oh, they do have BS Attack AP, so that's how you get the AP into your army. But I'm just worried about them because they don't have any negative mods. They just got BS 13, and you're sort of trusting average luck a bit too much. That's just my view. You guys might like Mormaers. They might do well for you. At least they've got a little unicorn as their logo. Whew, okay, making good progress. I'm on the water today instead of the wine, just because it's like 4 o'clock. Alright, last list is going to be O12. This will be probably the most difficult one for me, just because I feel like O12 is an underpowered faction. I say that because they don't have access to the absolutely ball-busting, broken stuff that the top dog factions have. They don't have, you know, avatars, they don't have tiger creatures, they don't have Prothion, they don't have Morans with all their peripherals and puppet bots, they don't have access to Asawiras, they don't have Symbiomates or Eraser, and they don't have Polaris Bearpods. They don't have anything in their list which is, you know, the equivalent amount of, you know, just absolutely stupidly undercostedness anywhere. So we're going to have to do the best that we can. I was thinking the alpha unit rather is probably your staple here. Most O12 lists are going to have this guy, but today I'm going to try and base the list around the Zeta unit, and because of that, I'm not going to take the alpha. I'm going to take Catherine Show instead, because we're going to have to really cut costs. We're going to be really working with a tight budget with this Zeta in our list here. And she does have that hollow mask, so she can keep herself safe due to that. But I like the idea that you're using the NCO and using that from show, and the Zeta can at least move out with NCO and the tactical awareness and try and carry the game. I do also really like the fact that he's got remote presence, which makes him a lot better than the Nomad equivalent, the Salamandra. Because when you're repairing him, you get the rerolls, and that's a very, very big deal. With that in mind, we need to go and find the cheapest engineer we can, which fortunately is the Monstrucker at just 12 points, and we're going to grab him a Yudbot for another 3 points. Cool, so now we really need to make sure that our list has a lot of cheap stuff if we want to get to 15 orders, which is usually the goal. So to do that, we're going to come right down here to the bots. I'm going to straight away grab 2 Flash Pulse bots and 2 Minesweeper bots. Again, this isn't very meaty, it doesn't really fight, but it provides the orders to that Zeta, and that's what we're going to be needing. Okay, Varangian Guards, similar sort of thing. They are very, very useful midfielders with smoke grenades and the ability to berserk things, or just close combat something without using berserk at just 12 points, providing the AP, close range, submachine gun, chain rifle trading. They are a very, very good unit, and you should try to be relying on whatever undercosted stuff you can. Gangbusters are extremely important for their mine layer ability, but they make me sad because there's no Fort Observer option here in N4, and the Killer Hacker, although he is a good profile at face value, I just can't bring myself to take him, given that we are living in an environment where any combined army player is just going to fire a picture across with Bit and Kiss and delete you. And a lot of these NA2 players are going to fire a picture with Valeria Gromos and will have a Killer Hacker somewhere else in their army, like a Bolt Killer Hacker or a Zuyong Hideout Killer Hacker or whatever it might be. And your Gangbuster will just die. So I'm going to try and avoid taking the Gangbuster if I can. We'll come back to him. Okay, now, the list does need more stuff that can fight. Liang Kai would be a nice one, although Liang Kai sort of does a little bit of what the Varangian Guards do. I'd kind of like to have something else in there that can do a fair bit of work. And we also need specialists going on. I'm thinking maybe the Dakini Paramedic is going to be our specialist. Because he's very fast, willpower 3 is decently reliable, he can sometimes fight given his mimetism, and that paramedic might give us a chance to revive, say, like a random Varangian that goes unconscious rather than dogged. We'll come back to it, possibly removing the Dakini later, we'll come back to that, we'll see. I would like to have at least one TR bot, because we've already got the Yudbot, the Yudbot Monstrucker combination in the list, so having that there means we can make the most of our engineer. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and another 95 points going into group 2. Okay, now another choice which I was a fan of is actually the Delta unit, because there is a boarding shotgun Panzerfaust profile I always was quite a fan of. Because you can combat jump, I mean, Fizz 12 is not bad, combat jump somewhere and then boarding shotgun your opponent, but if you fail the roll, you've at least got a long range gun, and most drop troopers don't have that, so that's why the Delta seems pretty cool to me. We do need to spend more SWCs though, so is it going to be an Epsilon with an HMG? I mean, the Zeta's probably enough for that. I mean, even though we have the smoke, we kind of want a combo. I am going to leave the Delta out for now. Oh, sorry, I do want the Delta. I've just given everybody a speech about the Delta. I didn't mean to do that. Let's come down to the Beta Trooper. The Beta Trooper. Yep, so we want Specialist Beta Trooper. But we can't spend any SWCs if we take him. That sucks. Okay. So if I take the 37-point Specialist Operative, damn, that sucks up a ton of points. I don't think we can afford it, even though he's a good unit. What about the Lynx? Lynx unit. So the multi-sniper is obviously a useful ARO piece, and possibly leave him next to the Dakini for reviving. The specialist, I mean, we need more specialists in this list, I'm not kidding. We've got, what, the Monstrucker and the Dakini, and that's it. Maybe the Zetbot from the Zeta. It's not great, is it? What else can we include? It might be worth just popping in another bot, like just the normal sensor bot. I mean, could that be the answer? I mean, we need some specialists in here. And that just drops us off with 20 points and 1.5 SWCs to spend. It's not great, is it, guys? It's not wonderful here, supporting that Zeta. What about the Cyclops? They're pretty... Oh, the Specialist Operative. Okay, great. Again, no SWCs. Bluecoats. I love these guys, but again, I'm looking for button presses right now that are cheap, and I'm just not seeing a ton of them. Maybe we could just take the old trash Kappa unit. Let's have a look. Kappa unit. So yeah, the submachine gun here, this guy, if you get hit by a pitcher and he just gets deleted, you've really only lost a 12-point guy. But given all of our field of repeater bots, I think that he could actually be useful because you at least have some hacking if they come too far into your territory. So I don't mind that. Now what we need to do is to upgrade something here that, you know, we can spend another 8 points on and see if we can get some more SWCs into the list. We could even actually take another Kappa, which seems kind of strange. But no, it doesn't quite work out, does it? Alright, so Kappa Hacker Specialist, Paramedic Specialist over here. That's a couple of them. Maybe this Delta ought to be the Spitfire Delta. We could actually afford that. That actually is kind of interesting. But then it just sort of goes against my theory of just dropping him in no matter what and then using the Panzerfaust long range. Maybe we don't need both Varangians. So if I took out one Varangian, 20 points allows me to try and look for something which has more SWCs we can spend. The Red Fury Sirius is a lot of people's sweetheart. Back when I played 012, I just didn't really love it because without Marcus State, if you're going second, you don't want to deploy midfield, and if you are going first, I felt like it's quite an expensive piece to try and get stuff done with, and a lot of the time you run into your opponents, you know, Knight of Justice Missile Launcher and a Link Team or whatever, or Kahu, and we just sort of saw what that kind of list looks like. Team Sirius doesn't stand a great chance of cracking those kinds of arrows, unfortunately. Yeah, okay. Let's do a bit more thinking. So 20 points we've got. The Alpha unit, maybe we could put the Alpha unit back in there. Unfortunately, he's not a specialist, but if Catherine Show 5, that's, so if we put the, okay, so this list is actually looking a little bit more interesting now that we've got the Alpha, because then we can downgrade the Zeta to the Hyper Rapid. So we now have a bunch more points to spend because he's cheaper, and we still haven't spent that 1.5. We could take 2 links, that would be kind of funny, or we could even take another TR bot, that would be a fun one. So if I put the TR bot in there, is there anything we can downgrade? Minus 10 points. Not really seeing it, unless we turn the Oko into a War Core. But let's just go have a look at that. So if I take the War Core, which is probably something I should have been doing right from the back, because we need the cheapest stuff that we can. Then if I was to drop the Kappa, no, I like the Kappa. If I drop, I mean, do we have enough specialists? I don't feel like we do. The Varangian, no, can't drop him. This is difficult. Let's have a look. So let's go with that Delta. Okay, so we drop the Delta, and then maybe we could put that that Varangian guard back in there. We take the other version of him just so we've got 2 different choices. What have we got here? All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wow, we've actually gone all the way out to 12, so we can actually drop one thing. Alright, so if I now drop the Fuzzbot, now I can upgrade something else to be 8 points more expensive. So if I take out this Varangian guard, yeah, okay, so now we can go and have a look at Blue Coats again. Okay, we could take this, my favorite is actually the cheapest one, the Adhesive Launcher, so that actually is, in some ways, that actually can be better than the Varangian guard, just because that Natural Born Warrior really catches people out with close range, close combat. Lawkeepers, let's have a look. Can we take Liang Kai? I think we can. So now we've got a legal list. Liang Kai versus like Blue Coats and stuff. Again, I feel like this is the wrong faction to be taking Liang Kai, because you just get heaps of value out of something like a Blue Coat if he gets into close combat, and he sort of trades in a similar way, like he's got that riot stopper. Adhesive Launcher Burst +1. I mean, that could be just so devastating to some people. Let's keep looking. So if I go back to the other fuzz bot here, I could take a second one of these Okos. That's kind of fun. You don't see that very often. 2 sensor bots like that, which is a fun way of doing it. Let's put this blue coat over here. So we should have 9. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll just pop this capper into the first group. Cool. All right, here's my O12 list. I don't love it. I don't know if I'd need as many specialists as I've taken. The Okos seem a little bit wasteful to me. So, I mean, again, if we're going to spend a bit more time on it, I think I'd swap one of them out for something else that can have a few, like a 0.5 SWCs in there. Maybe a authorized bounty hunter would actually be better. But again, I mean, we wanted specialists, didn't we? It's just a shame that we have to take cappers, and we could take like a doctor over here. I guess that might be the better way to go. So like if we take one Oko out and we put the Lambda doctor in there, what that means is we can keep her next to the Lynx. It's a little bit of a giveaway, but reviving the Lynx rather than not reviving is a big deal. And the Dakini paramedic isn't always going to get the job done when he's firing his little mid-jector kit everywhere. There is that. Also, you know, if you lose your Monstrucker to some sort of stray shot, you can't revive both of your HMGs on the Peelers or the Zeta, so you have to be a bit careful with them. So having a doctor nearby to him to cover that eventuality is probably a good one as well. As you can see, guys, O12, not normally a list I build for, not my favorite army, and probably not the best list builder for them, but you can sort of see the thought process behind how I would go about, you know, trying to make them battle-worthy. And this one's not bad. I mean, this Zeta here, you can pump a lot of orders into them in turn 1, so you can move out, blast them, and pull back. And then reactive turn, you've got the Zeta in partial cover, you've got the Peelers behind some low walls, they drop prone when they go unconscious, you revive them with the Monstrucker, you pull out the Lynx. So on an open table, this list has got a lot of bang, you know, active turn and reactive turn, so it could be quite fearsome in the hands of a reasonably competent player. Alright guys, this has been another episode of Let's Build Some Lists. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll be back with another one in a few months. And for now, yeah, have a great rest of your day.